Palestine's bid to join the UN fails following Washington's veto. Bankruptcy in Hong Kong is on the rise. The United States and Britain imposed a new round of sanctions on Iran as concern grows that Tehran's earlier attack on Israel could fuel a wider war in the Middle East. The sanctions are meant to hold Iran accountable for last weekend's attack and to deter further such activity. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control targeted 16 people and 2 entities in Iran that produce engines that powered drones used in the April 13th attack on Israel. Washington also sanctioned 5 firms involved in steel production and 3 subsidiaries of Iranian automaker Bauman Group, which is accused of supporting Iran's military. The United States voted against a Palestinian request to the United Nations Security Council for full UN membership, blocking the world body's recognition of a Palestinian state. China's permanent representative to the United Nations said the decision is most disappointing. Tracy Furness has more.
A council resolution needs at least 9 votes in favor to pass and no veto by either the United States, Britain, France, Russia or China. But the US voted against the Palestinian request to the United Nations Security Council for full UN membership, which prevents the world body from recognizing the Palestinian state.
The result of the vote is as follows: 12 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 2 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council.
The US representative for Special Political Affairs at the United Nations said the United States still supports a 2-state solution, but it should be negotiated directly between the Palestinian Authority and Israel with the support of the US and other partners.
The United States continues to strongly support a 2-state solution. This vote does not reflect opposition to Palestinian statehood, but instead is an acknowledgement that it will only come from direct negotiations between the parties.
The 15-member council voted on a draft resolution that recommends to the 193-member UN General Assembly that the state of Palestine be admitted to membership of the United Nations. The 2 abstentions were from the UK and Switzerland. China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Fu Chong, said that the international community must no longer overlook the long-standing aspiration of the Palestinian people for independence and statehood, nor should it perpetuate the historical injustices they have suffered. The Palestinian mission to the United Nations first requested full UN member state status in 2011. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
In New York, more than 100 students from Columbia University were arrested after a pro-Palestinian protest at the campus. NBC with more.
Confrontation at Columbia today. Police are moving protesters from campus. Citing extraordinary circumstances, Columbia University President Manoush Shafiq called in the NYPD to clear an encampment of pro-Palestinian student demonstrators. The encampment set up Wednesday morning, the same day Shafiq testified on Capitol Hill about anti-Semitism on campus.
We must uphold freedom of speech because it's essential to our academic mission, but we cannot and shouldn't tolerate abuse of this privilege to harass and discriminate.
In a letter to the university community, Shafiq noted, protests have a storied history at Columbia, where anti-Vietnam demonstrators took over buildings on campus in 1968. But in asking for help from the police, she said, the encampment and related disruptions pose a clear and present danger to the substantial functioning of the university.
We are risking our academic standing just to show the administrators that we are not okay with their decisions.
Several demonstrators today stomping on an Israeli flag. Some students saying they feel unsafe on campus.
I feel as though people are kind of weaponizing anti-Semitism.
Demonstrators telling us they plan to keep their protests going despite the police presence.
Do you feel like this administration has clamped down on students and faculty members' free speech?
100% yes, I do believe that.
New York City's mayor tonight saying police made more than 100 arrests on a campus severely divided.
Figures from the official receiver's office showed the number of bankruptcy petitions in March was at the highest since November last year. Mimo Singhai reports.
The official receiver's office today released the latest statistics on the number of bankruptcy petitions. 783 were recorded in March, which is almost 21% higher than February and the highest since November last year. The number of winding up requests for companies in March saw an increase as well as 69 cases, a 30% increase from the previous month. Meanwhile, 641 cases in March were related to bankruptcy or takeover orders, a 16% rise over February. Speaking at a Legislative Council meeting today, the government said they will continue to support small and medium-sized enterprises through the SME Financing Guarantee Scheme, allowing eligible companies to obtain financing from lenders.
But we understand that enterprises face difficulties at the moment. That's why we have provided different options for them so that they can repay the loans, especially the principal, slowly.
Authorities said they will closely monitor the situation. News 9, TVB News.
The national security trial of Next Digital founder Jimmy Lai continued into its 63rd day. Chan Se-wah continued to testify as accomplice witness. He said Lai wished to unite overseas organizations and street forces to topple the Chinese economy and political power. Chan said the former media tycoon wanted a united front composed of business leaders and international forces to pressure and sanction China. Still ahead, day 2 of Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to Indonesia. Cathay Pacific gets creative when hiring new talent. Voting begins in India for almost 1 billion people. Welcome back. Foreign Minister Wang Yi said China hopes to deepen collaboration with Indonesia in the future. Beijing's top diplomat made the comment at a high-level bilateral meeting on the second day of his visit to the country. Mimo Singhai reports.
On the second day of his official visit to Indonesia, Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Labuan Bajo to attend the 4th meeting of the high-level dialogue cooperation mechanism between the two countries. Wang was greeted by the Minister for Coordinated Maritime and Investment Affairs, Luhut Panjaitan. Before the meeting, Wang took pictures with Indonesian government officials, including Panjaitan and Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi. Panjaitan said he hopes the relationship of the two countries can be fruitful, like the blossom durian trees. He said Indonesia will maintain its friendly policy toward China after the president-elect Prabowo Subianto becomes the leader. The Indonesian official also mentioned Wang had tasted different durian species in the country on Thursday evening. Wang, meanwhile, said both China and Indonesia are developing countries facing a complicated geopolitical situation. He told Indonesian officials that China hopes to deepen bilateral collaboration in the future. Labuan Bajo was once a small fishing village. The place has now turned into a tourist hotspot thanks to its nature landscapes and wildlife. Local authorities hope to attract more Chinese tourists to visit. On Thursday, Wang met Indonesia President Joko Widodo before the Labuan Bajo meeting. Wang said China is willing to continue the tradition of friendship and mutual trust with Indonesia. News 9, TVB News.
Cathay Pacific's passenger capacity in the first quarter of this year increased by over 50% year-on-year. And the airline has organized recruitment activities for 3 consecutive days with the goal of hiring more staff. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Manpower problems remain a shortfall hampering the full recovery of the aviation industry. But Cathay Pacific noted progress has been made towards the recovery of flights and available destinations. The city's flagship airline announced its passenger capacity in March reached more than 1.8 million people, a rise of over 40% year-on-year. While many raised concerns about the lack of pilots in the aviation sector, Cathay Pacific stressed there is more urgency regarding the shortage of flight attendants.
The positions that we most need to fill is actually cabin flight attendants position. It's not the flight pilots positions. Right now we are in a very fast rebuild phase. In terms of pilots, right now we've got around 2,900 pilots, and we forecast that we need to recruit another 500 to support our rebuild journey to resume our capacity back to the pre-pandemic level.
In a bid to achieve this target, the airline organized interviews with candidates on this Cathay-themed double-decker for 3 consecutive days starting today. The bus will travel to locations such as Central, Causeway Bay, Chunwan, and Tongcheng. And some candidates were eager to share the reasons for applying for a position at the airline.
Actually, I've always traveled with Cathay, visiting back to my country from Hong Kong to India. So I've always seen the service being really up to mark. And that really attracted me over time to work with Cathay Pacific as customer officer.
I can speak 5 languages: Cantonese, English, Mandarin, Thai, and Spanish. And I think it's gives me an advantage because I think communication is really important, and even vital in lounge attendant. We need to communicate with different customers.
Meanwhile, Cathay estimated some 1,500 flight attendants from the mainland will join the company next year.
Besides having interviews on the bus, candidates can also register for mini-games on the vehicle. Winners can receive rewards such as this A350 model. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Number 2 alarm fire broke out at a shipyard in Tam Kong Shan Road in Qingyi this morning. Heavy white smoke came out from the shipyard. Fire hoses were used to put out the blaze. Police received reports at 8:46 a.m. saying a fire broke out at a tin-sheeted structure of a shipyard. More than 30 people were evacuated. No one was injured. Firefighters put out the blaze at around 11:30 a.m. India has begun its election process in which 969 million people will vote for a new parliament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a 3rd term in office, and polls suggest he will win. The voting is in different regions is staggered over 7 phases, which stretch across the next 6 weeks. Voters in 21 states cast their ballot today, including these people who queued in the city of Chennai on the East Coast. Several opposition parties have banded together to try to stop Modi's BJP party winning the most seats in the lower house.
Modi has become popular for blending Hinduism with development. This is something that has struck a chord with many Hindus, who make up about 80% of India's population. Meanwhile, Modi's critics and the opposition say that what's at stake is India's democracy itself. Dozens of their politicians are under investigation or in jail. Attacks against minorities has become more brazen, and Modi's government is accused of cracking down on free speech and the media. However, most surveys still say that Modi and his party are likely to win when the results come out on June 4th.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said Friday that the future of Europe is being decided in Ukraine. He made the comment while attending a group of 7 foreign ministers gathering on the Italian island of Capri.
The future of Europe is being decided in Ukraine. The future of Middle East is being decided in Israel. And the future of the world order is being decided in both these places. The West has the capacity to be efficient in all crises. And this must be clear. It has the capacity, military capacity, financial capacity, but it has to provide Ukraine with all necessary resources as soon as possible to save Europe from a larger war.
Foreign ministers from leading industrialized nations have been meeting on Capri to discuss both the escalating conflict in the Middle East and further military aid for Ukraine. On Thursday, NATO and EU officials urged G7 ministers to take quick and concrete steps to provide more air defense systems and artillery to Ukraine. Pope Francis asked for a moment of silence for children at war as he once again referenced Ukraine and Gaza. Francis was meeting with thousands of students, teachers, and school leaders from the National Network of Schools for Peace in the Vatican. He told the congregation to take 2 minutes to think and pray for those children caught up in the conflict. The pontiff also said, think of all the Ukrainian children that forgot to smile and the kids in Gaza facing guns and hunger. Legislation that could ban TikTok in the U.S. if its China-based owner ByteDance doesn't sell its stake has been included in the House Republicans' foreign policy package. The bill could be law as soon as next week if Congress moves quickly. The TikTok bill passed the House in March and has widespread support in both chambers. It was included along with military funding for Ukraine and Israel after negotiations with the Senate over how long the Chinese technology firm would have to sell its stake in the app. A floor vote is expected in the coming days. Joe Biden has said he will sign it into law if it passes through the Senate. Guide dogs have long been trusted partners of the visually impaired, but the role of these furry companions has recently been expanded to heal the hearts of the city's senior residents. Timothy Lee has more.
This once quiet elderly care home has become a house of joy ever since the arrival of Fruity. Born to a guide dog family, the 5-year-old Labrador was previously trained to follow in the path of her parents' line of work. But after encountering some problems over the course of training, Fruity transitioned to the role of companion dog, having been a major source of happiness for some 60 residents at this two-moon care home since last December. Care home resident Johnson said Fruity's arrival made the whole atmosphere much more energetic. He praised the Labrador for her friendliness to his fellow residents, adding that she feels proud about that fact. The Hong Kong Seeing Eye Dog Services began the trial of its companion dog scheme a year ago and has trained 6 such animals as of now. A representative of the Guide Dog Services Center said its organization had to work with care home staff to train the dogs for at least 30 hours and had to carefully observe their behavior. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun expresses hope for the scheme to expand to serve more targets, such as children and disabled individuals. Sun said the companionship offered by the dogs allow elderly care home residents to transform from those being cared after to carers themselves. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.